Here is a box which contains not the animated semaphore, that is actually already out. And today I'm going to try to get it working. Let's see what is inside this box. Here is another crane top that resembles the one here sitting on the station. Only this one is slightly different. Also, this crane is missing pieces. It's missing the crank, so I won't be able to spin this one. But I do have some parts and pieces available. Now, let's see what's in the rest of the box. Here is the rest of the crane. Here we have the American Flyer Electromagnetic crane. So this is the base of it. Clean under here. Oh, this is very interesting. Okay, so this is actually a lot more complex than I was imagining. There is actually what appears to be a full motor underneath this. I'm really curious because I've never owned one of these before. I don't know how it works. I'm going to try to put it together and make it operate. The first thing I want to focus on getting back into operating condition is the top of this crane. This crane part is operated manually. If I can get the top to come apart here, it is all seized up. Alright, so that clips onto the roof. And it's not in too bad shape. The back wall is dented in again. But the real issue with this one is that there is the crank to adjust the string up and down is missing and broken off. And the string is no longer wound around, but there should be a crank on this side and then a bushing on the inside, and that holds that together. So where am I going to find a spare part for that? Well, I have this crane. This crane came with those other cranes. This one has all of its parts. So actually, I don't really want to take this one apart because it is complete. Even though paint is coming off in places and it's a little dirty, I want to leave this one alone. Then I can clean up and put this back together. I'll have to tie the string on here underneath so that it can wind it up and down. And then I'm going to straighten this out. This will also need to be cleaned up, so I'll have to scrub this in the sink. And then I'm going to have to tackle the base. Oh wow, okay, I didn't realize this. There's actually a full reverse drum underneath here. Alright, so I'm actually starting to recognize things underneath here. See if I can get the light so you can see it. This motor is actually the same size motor that was used in the HO scale pre-war Gilbert steam locomotives. So that motor would have been in the engine, and this is pretty much identical to the reverse mechanism that would have been in the tender for the HO scale American Flyer locomotives. That would have been the AC operated locomotives. And then we have our field coil. So this is our electromagnetic pickup. So what it's supposed to be is that the top of that crane sits on the top here. There's also a screw missing, so this should have some kind of a screw to hold it in place so that when it's operating, it effectively sits on there like so. Yeah, so then this actually moves back and forth, but it's powered by the motor. Really neat. So this is the mechanism out of the base of the electromagnetic crane. And it doesn't look like much at the moment, but I just want to show you that it does operate, at least the motor portion. Really, this is exactly the same as servicing one of your early HO scale AC operated locomotives. The motor is identical, the reverse unit is identical other than the frame being aluminum. It uses the exact same standard drum and fingers on the reverser, and the same field and armature as the HO scale locomotives. I just want to show you that this does operate. So it's got multiple reduction gears, at least 3, maybe 4 reduction gears in this. So it turns it very slowly. So this is meant to be operated at full speed, and you can see the windings, or the armature will spin up the top, and then it will turn the base of it very slowly. So I'm going to run this on track power instead of full blast, and I'll show you just how this operates. It'll work better if I hold it up. Yeah, it runs as expected. So I'm not sure, I'm probably not going to take the motor very far apart. I can actually get to the commutator pretty easily from right here, and I'll just degrease it as much as I can and give it a thorough helping of oil, because there's a lot of gears in this, and then put the motor back together and finish cleaning the reverse mechanism. That's the culprit of non-operation in this unit again. So the rest of this, like I said, is basically the same exact as servicing an HO scale pre-war Hudson locomotive. So if you'd like to see how that's done, I did 3 videos on 3 different HO scale Hudsons that you can check out on my channel. Alright, I will see you when this is put back together. Okay, so here's where things are. Last time I worked on this, the motor works quite well. I cleaned up and I'm starting to reassemble the solenoid reverse unit, and the frame it is steel, but it was still corroded like it was made out of aluminum, which is kind of strange. So I cleaned it up and I actually painted it with etching primer to try to prevent any further corrosion or rusting from occurring. And these little phenolic boards that hold the fingers on are starting to crack. So I'm just reinforced these with super glue. Once that cures, that should make a pretty strong piece of phenolic board that shouldn't be at risk of snapping and falling off. While I'm waiting for that to cure, I took a look over here at the coil. This is the Electromagnetic, and it's just a coil of wire, which is basically a field magnet. Anyway, this wire is the coil seems to work okay and is very strong at picking up steel objects. The problem is that there is some points of failure in this cloth covered wire. Typically cloth wire is okay. Oh, let's see, where was I? Oh yes, I was working on the field coil, and I removed the field coil from the conglomeration of wires, and I disconnected it so that I could test it independently and inspect this cloth wire. Now normally cloth wires are okay to use, but in this case this wire is faulty, and I will show you what I mean by that. Okay, watch closely. Oh. It's working correctly this time. Yeah, so this wire is intermittent, and earlier, before I turn the camera on, this point here where the wire is cracked is actually shorting out, and I can see it. There it goes. Yeah, it's dead shorting and smoking away, and it gets very hot. So I will be replacing this wire. I'm going to see though if I can find some that's very soft and flexible like this. I can't really use this type of wire. I have new wire that's like this, but it's way too stiff to be used. This is super flexible. I've just completed the restoration of the reverser and motor mechanism for the crane tower, and I had a little problem with some of the wiring that I had on the reverse unit, is that I had these 2 wires switched. And every time I changed directions with the reverser, the coil lost power because it was shorted out, and it didn't deliver power to the armature, so the field magnet would get hot. If you run power through the field magnet without power through the armature, the field magnet will overheat and potentially melt. So you don't want to do that. So once I figured out that I had these 2 wires swapped, I corrected the problem, and then now it cycles correctly all the way around. I also had a small issue with this spring. The spring on this side needs to be a certain tension so that it holds the arm off and that it will cycle correctly. If there's no tension on the spring, it will pull the this arm here down and it won't release it back up, so it won't continue to cycle. So the spring is tensioned correctly, and now we can see that this motor operates correctly. So it spins one direction, cycles, and spins the other direction. Now I'm running this on the track voltage so I can run it to 7 to 15 volts, but normally this would be hooked up to straight 15 volts. I also did take this all the way down and I pulled the brushes out and cleaned the carbon dust out of the brush tubes. I was thinking that the brushes were not contacting the armature properly, but they were, and so now those are even more clean than they were. Alright, the last things to do on this will be to repair the wire on this, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do this repair twice. In order to get it working for this video, I'm going to hook up some temporary wiring that will be a little bit stiffer than I would like. I haven't had a chance to go to the hobby shop yet and find some. They have actually super soft, but it's rubber coated wire, and I'm going to pick up some of that in the future and finish this down the road. Well, this turned to be quite the project. So I ended up replacing the entire length of wire for the electromagnet because this wire is pretty awful. It's nice and soft, but soldering it is almost impossible, and it frays and it disintegrates and falls apart, and so unfortunately it needs to go right in the garbage. I do intend to put on a permanent wire. The wire underneath isn't quite finished, and I have a small little bug with the reverser underneath yet, but all that will be worked out at another date. For now, it is complete enough to test out here, and then I'm going to take it upstairs to my Christmas layout and set it in place, and then operate it and load and unload some things here. Let's see how it does at picking up this piece of steel. Alright, let's take this upstairs and put it on the layout. Well, the crane is now installed in the layout. I moved Sam the semaphore man because it was sitting right there, and I determined that this would be a better spot for the crane. So, we're going to take my Chicago Northwestern freight train around for a few laps, and then I will operate the crane and see if I can get a load of metal something into the gondola here. Alright, here we go. Right there. Okay, let's see if I can get a load into the gondola here. So after about 4 minutes of practice, I think I figured out how I can get this to work. I only have 2 hands and 1 button. So what I figured out I can do is I can unload this spike from the gondola as long as it's sitting on the top edge of it so that it can reach. Otherwise, I have to have the magnet on, and while the magnet's on, it's moving. And then I have to adjust the string up and down so that it can raise and lower high enough to pick up and release loads. What I'm going to do, I think, once I replace this wire and finish the wiring permanently, is I'm actually going to create a bypass so that I can operate the electromagnet separately from the motor. Alright, let's see if I can unload this rail spike here. Success. How about this piece? Well, as you can see, the electromagnetic crane works. It still needs a little bit of work, but it's complete enough to operate on my American Flyer Christmas layout. I hope you enjoyed this and found this somewhat interesting. There are other videos. Dave's American Flyer Trains has done a much more thorough repair and reassembly of his electromagnetic crane over his channel. You might want to take a look at that. Thanks for watching.